Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and all of our non-binary listeners out there. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program. It's that time of the week where we dig underneath the headlines. We expose the mainstream media on their BS. We talk to activists, local and abroad, talk about what's going on in the revolution, as it were. Now, as always, the following thoughts, views, and opinions are not necessarily those of 89.1 FM, WIDR Kalamazoo, or Western Michigan University, no matter how dope or insightful they may in fact be. Joined right now my co-host Lawrence. Say hi to the people, Lawrence.
Yo, what up, everybody?
So I think today, let's start off with some good news, because actually we do have a good chunk of good news, and I think we could start off either with the local stuff or the slam dunk in the primaries last night.
We should talk about all of it right now. Some quick hits.
Yep.
Justice Democrats, brand new Congress, our revolution, absolutely smashed this last Tuesday night.
Flawless victory.
Yeah, it was. Their track record of these organizations are absolutely amazing. I mean, Justice Democrats has only been around since after 2016, after the debacle of
that was that whole election, really.
Yeah. And out of 16 candidates, 10 of them have went to the primaries. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, man, they're absolutely smashing right now. I mean, there's been our revolution has a over 60% win rate now. Same thing with brand new Congress. Like they've been smashed. Like there's no other way to prove it. Like the progressive wave has been on an uptick, and last night was a great edition of it.
Yeah, I'm going to try to pull up. I know we got an article in our group chat that lays out the concrete wins and all that. There it is. Yeah. So just some highlights. So some of the bigger victories. Randy Bryce, who was running in Wisconsin to take Paul Ryan's seat. Well, Paul's not seeking re-election. He basically did everything the money men and women asked him to do. So he's going off to retire. It's like, well, I've completely I tried to decimate healthcare, and I've given these billionaires this huge ass tax cut. I'm gonna go to the beach, So Randy Bryce won. He's going up against I can't remember his name. Some Republican dude. But I mean, it's a real winnable race, though, especially with somebody high profile like Paul Ryan out of the race.
Keith Ellison won his race. Bernie Sanders won his race.
Yeah, by like 95%.
But we've had all these articles lately with Politico and other articles that's been talking junk about Anastasia Cortez.
I wanted to talk about this too. Yeah,
and like the recent articles of them trashing the progressives, yet progressives keep winning.
Oh, even like Bernie was on Stephen Colbert the other night, and he's like, well, all the candidates you endorsed lost. And I really did want to bring this up because even like some of my friends who follow politics a little more casually, they're a little bit more down in the dumps than really they should be. And I think part of the reason for that is like, it's good because the mainstream media have basically laid out their strategy for how they're going to try to gaslight everybody into saying that the progressive movement isn't successful. And what they're basically demanding is like, unless it's 100% success rate, it's failing, it's floundering, it's not doing what everybody said it would do. And frankly, don't believe that. That is propaganda at its highest.
They have a 50 to 60% of win rate right now.
Yeah, and
like it's not like it's in the groups in particular. Brand new Congress, our revolution, Justice Democrats. These are some of the more high profile ones. Even Democratic Socialists, they're winning And some of these groups haven't been around for more than 2 years. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
This is when the Tea Party was first forming, the mainstream media gave them all kind of coverage in the world because a lot of them were just idiotic nutcases.
Yeah.
We have people who we have intelligent, informed representatives of all shapes, colors, sizes, and creeds winning on a progressive platform. Now, yes, there are some high-profile candidates that did not win, but there's multiple candidates that outside of the more high-profile ones that have been that are absolutely revolutionary. We're gonna have 2 Muslim women who may be going to the Congress.
Some fiery leftist Muslim women.
Yes, you know what I'm saying? Even after they tried to smear Keith Ellison, he ended up winning by over 50% vote. And as much junk as they've been talking about Bernie Sanders, he won with over 90% of the vote. It's about the policies. So much, forget about the labels and what people cling to. It's about the ideas and policies, and that's getting to the American people. Yeah. The American people are realizing, hey, we have around $2 trillion worth of student loan debt collectively in America. We just gave away a $2 trillion tax cut to the richest people in the world. Yeah.
I did want to mention one little thing. I want to put a pin in the whole Keith Ellison thing because as of right now, if you're not familiar with this, there's a story dropped right before the election, and it probably the best source for him is this local news piece. I'll if y'all are interested in checking it out.
They try to smear him all the time.
Well, I know
every
they
time,
do.
Every time he runs, they are trying to hit him with the.
And I will say it is rather dubious that this dropped just a couple of days before the election. Yeah, I will say that, but. If you want to check out the article where they talk, the woman in question released a statement, Karen Monahan, Fox9.com. They have the full statement in there.
It's from Fox.
And it's really compelling, and it sounds bad. She talks about some pretty it's kind of a narcissistic gaslighting type of abuse, and the jury's still out on that for me. According to this article, she's got a lot of text messages and recordings, and I usually am on the side of believing the victim, and I think if there's concrete evidence to back it up, I think it's also important to understand that when you have somebody who is as high profile as Keith Ellison, like you said, there's going to be smears and stuff coming out, but
that's not the only smear.
I'm sure it's not.
They accused him of supporting Louis Farrakhan.
All the dog whistly Muslim stuff. Because
he said that the occupation of Palestine is a bad thing. They've also called him anti-Semitic. And here's the thing. Keith Ellison is the 4th or 5th most progressive person that is in our body politics. When it comes to elected officials, he's in the top 5 of most progressive. I would even argue there are times when he's in the top 3, in my opinion. He's definitely in the top 5. My problem is that with Keith and also even with Bernie, a lot of times they're coddling the same people who not only smear but cheat them. They cheated Keith Ellison out of the DNC chair,
that's
and they
true.
smeared him. And Bernie, they cheated Bernie Sanders, and there are times when Bernie Sanders is we still need to support the left. And I'm like, yes, there are times when you need to. So I agree. There are times when we need to support our people. There are also times when your people need to get slapped in the face. They get slapped in the back of the head, be like, yo, you tripping.
Well, it's interesting to see to me, because, like, something I've always said is like, well, like the thing with people like Bernie and Keith is like, they gotta walk this really tenuous line. They've got this weird shotgun marriage with the Democratic Party, and maybe there's like certain radical things they can't say. But at the same time, you have Alexandria, and I'm sorry, what's the name of the woman who just won in Detroit?
I can't think of her name.
Okay, but
you got Alexandria, you got Rokana, you got
the point I wanted to make is like both Alexandria and okay, I am gonna look this up.
You have Rokana, you got her, you have the people who just won in Missouri.
But okay, well, I wanted to say
Jayapal,
specifically,
Miss Jayapal, she just won too.
Specifically, Alexandria and the Congresswoman, the prospective Congresswoman in Detroit, and I will look up the name before we're done talking about it. Have both made really high profile appearances on CNN, where they have out and out criticized the Democratic Party and criticized where our money goes and all that. The woman who just took John Conyers' seat actually specifically called out like people like Nancy Pelosi and stuff for being too cozy with corporations, and basically telling us like hop on the anti-corporate train or get out the way, so there is a sea change going on with kind of the level of I feel like people like Alexandria and her are kind of taking the kid gloves off. They're a little bit more aggressive, where Bernie, he's in a place where he's built this whole brand of like, I have to be diplomatic and et cetera, et cetera. But
here's the thing. There are times in politics we talk about carrots and sticks. Carrots is I'm going to be nice. But I need you to come and support what I'm doing. But I will be nice and support some of the things that you may be talking about, even though I may disagree with you. A stick is, no, I'm not going to support you. I'm not going to support you because you're not helping, you're hurting. And especially Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi's not helping. And she's trying to run again to be the leader of the minority. And I'm like, no, you don't. And it's Premier Jayapal. That's the lady you're looking at.
Okay,
and I can't.
It's so just to clarify who we've been talking about for the last few minutes. The progressive who won in the Minnesota primary. That's Ilhan Omar, and then the young firebrand who just won out in Detroit. That's Rashida Tlaib.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm slaughtered that. But sorry, go ahead, Lawrence.
Okay, but for the progressives that listen to this show, I mean, yeah, last night was a victory. Last night was a win. That we can put in our books.
And don't believe the hype. Oh man.
Yeah, and don't believe that. And
mainstream media is going to look for anything to say that we're losing.
Yeah, and don't believe that. Yeah. Oh no, it's not just that. The story that I wanted to talk about was how there was an article that came out saying that AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is as smart as Sarah Palin, and that got published and picked up, and it's been circulating. And I'm sitting here like. That's the story that I want to talk about, that of stories that annoyed me this week.
Well, I mean, to be fair, she probably can see corrupt Wall Street executives from her house.
Right? But the thing is that I'm sitting here and I'm laughing because it was a Republican. I forgot it was a Republican writer that wrote the piece that was basically doing this hit piece on AOC and basically saying that she has had a bunch of gaffes. She's had a bunch of gaffes since she's been in public light. And she's as intelligent as Sarah Palin. Okay, for one, she's had over 275 different interviews since she's won. Okay, so and she's been constantly out on the road campaigning for people. So she might have a gaffed one or two, whatever.
Oh, she got that statistic wrong by 2 points or something.
No, but that's
literally what they point to.
And I'm sitting here like. Republicans and I'm sitting here and I was sitting there reading the article and I'm like, this Republican writer has the nerve to say that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is as smart as Sarah Palin or is really dumb when the standard bearer for the Republicans have been George Walker Bush, Sarah Palin, Rudy Giuliani, Herman Cain, George Bush, not George Bush, but Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. Yeah.
And I'm like, you cannot say anyone is stupid when in the presidential archives, Covfefe is a thing. You cannot say anyone's stupid when Covfefe will forever be in the presidential library of things that our president, our current president, that will stay in the American archives of memorable things that our president has said, and Covfefe is one of them. Like,
maybe it's code for something. I'll go ask Q about it.
QAnon. That's the other thing that I wanted to talk about. The Unite the Right to.
Oh yeah,
that was something.
Yeah. That's some good news. Yeah.
That was something else that's some good news. For those who do not know, there was a Unite the Right to rally that happened.
Electric racist boogaloo.
Right. No. They don't get that as a b-boy, as the b-boy in the room.
I'm sorry.
They cannot. I do not associate them with that. Not at all. But no.
My apologies to all of my fellow hip hop heads out there. It was bad.
My thing is. Well, there's one bad thing that I want to talk about when it comes to that rally, but mostly good things. One, being publicly outed shamed a majority of the people that were going to go to that rally, so they didn't go. So anti-fascist protesters, counter-protesters, and them outing people are good things. That's a good thing. The fact that, yes, let these numbnuts have their First Amendment right to their First Amendment right to speech, and let those 24 people who showed up, 20 to 24 people showed up to that rally. Let them have their rally, and yes, the police being a neutral arbiter and separating the counter protesters, which was over 200, versus the fascist neo-Nazi Confederates, which was only 20 of them. Yeah, we have bigger numbers. Our ideas are better when it comes to the free market of ideas. More people agree with us, and let's keep it that way and keep it peaceful. The problem that I was having with it is that there were some anti-fascist people who were being aggressive with the media.
The Washington Post article. Well, finish up, and I kind of want to be the counterpoint here.
The thing is this: whenever the left I'm saying it with skepticism, because I know that there are provocateurs that are implanted into counter protests or protests that goes against the establishment or goes against a certain norm. And that there are people who will be planted to do bad things on behalf of anti-fascists or Black Lives Matter, things like that, because these things are happening. We have to, on the left, be active and watch our people, be accountable for our people. So if people are getting really aggressive and stuff, make sure that we're the ones calming it down. Because if the police have to get involved, or other people have to get involved, then it's going to make us look like we're in the wrong, which gives the other side validity. And that's the part that I get at. But I do want you to counter protest, because I want you to show that no, their backwards thinking is wrong. They are wrong. That their ideas suck. America's already defeated their ideas, and we're going to continue to.
Well, okay. So here's my counterpoint to that. And some of the stuff I agree, but so only 20 of them showed up, and to my mind, and this is backed up by a lot of the people who originally intended to go to this rally said this themselves. They decided not to go because they were afraid. They didn't want to go out in the streets and blast their Nazi rhetoric. And you went from last year, where there were hundreds of them showed up with their racist BS, to this year where you had you could count them in the dozens. And I think that's a direct, that shows you how effective anti-fascist organizing has been. And that includes punching Nazis and all that stuff. And
I don't support violence.
Well, I understand, but I'm just saying, it's similar. We chased. We didn't disintegrate the Traditionalist Workers' Party by writing a strongly worded letter. No. Put it that way.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
If it's defensive, if it's for defense, the fascists have walked up in my face and they're snatching signs. They're snatching my sign. They pushed me back. They pushed me or something. They've assaulted me in some way. Then yeah, by all means, they asked for that smoke. Give them said smoke.
But, I mean, their entire rhetoric calls for violence. I mean, it calls for genocide. You have these people wearing these Pinochet shirts. They're calling for
these QAnon shirts.
Yeah. Well, those are two separate things.
QAnon's retarded. Okay.
Well, we can talk a little bit about that after this, but I really want to wrap with the white supremacist thing. So, so my whole argument with that is you have these groups that are advocating violence on a grand scale, and even in their own rhetoric and preparing for these rallies, they say bring clubs, bring guns, be ready to get violent with these protesters. And a lot of what they do is antagonistic, but it's like I said, it's self-defense. And even though only 20 of them showed up, some of them might have had a gun. Some of them might have gone crazy and decided to start fighting people. That is where the anti-fascists come into defense. And I want to talk a little bit about that Washington Post article.
Hold on a second. The only thing that, again, context matters. Like when Dr. Cornel West and them was down in Charlottesville, and the white supremacists circled the church and all the other clergy people that were there, and the anti-fascists was the only reason why they survived, because those neo-Nazis was going to burn down that church. Again, that's when they want smoke, give them smoke. Yeah. Mm. But at the same time, because they are looking for a fight, and because they want to have a fight, most of the time the right wing is much more armed than we are, because we don't go out to protest with weaponry.
That's true.
So at the same time, because they want violence, they're going to get violence because that's what they want. But at the same time, that's when the police needs to be a neutral arbiter and be like, yo, calm that down. But,
well, as we talked about last week, they're not necessarily always neutral. That's just often actually siding with the fascists, as it were. So Lawrence just ran out to go let in another one of our co-hosts. But yeah, just kind of continuing on with that. So, what you see in these demonstrations, and specifically say in DC, is it was mostly nonviolent protesters. Let's get that clear. The ones that came out to protest the fascists were, for the vast majority, nonviolent. You have kind of anti-fascists there as a vanguard, who are kind of there ready to rumble in self-defense as need be. Now, my problem with that Washington Post article is, and it's kind of funny how so I do talk to some people who are a little bit more conservative on the right, and they talk about how this wouldn't have even been a story if the mainstream media didn't cover it so much. And there are certain people like James Woods who characterize anti-fascists as being the paramilitary wing of the Democratic Party. And you read articles like that, and no, make no mistake, mainstream media does not look kindly on anti-fascist protesters. And furthermore, I'd say one of the problems when they talk about harassment of the media, what they don't tell you is that the media kind of harasses these protesters. They're trying to constantly stick a camera in their face and get in. And there's all of these nonviolent protesters they can take pictures of, who are more than happy to get interviewed and covered. But the people who show up there in black bloc tactics deliberately do not want to be photographed. They do not want to be interviewed. They are there incognito as a way to protect themselves against fascists in their own community who will try to dox them. So,
I've been to direct action training.
Go ahead, Nora.
A wild Nora has appeared.
Yes.
So I've been to a few direct action trainings, and a lot of times when people organize around this, they have a designated media person who's designed to talk to the media about what they're protesting and spin it in an angle that's makes sense to people, that people can get behind their cause with, and it makes more sense than like just having any random person who's marching with you just saying stuff on TV.
I think the other part of that is that some of the people who are incognito, who got the aviators and the mask on to protect their identity and to protect themselves. I mean, yeah, you have to also realize that you are in a public space, and as a journalist's job is to get a story. And if you are there in the public space, they're going to try to interview you and talk to you. You can say that you don't want to be talked, you don't want to be talked to, you don't want to have pictures and things of that nature. But you can't punch them out like you're Kanye West dealing with the paparazzi. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's not how this works. You have to know how to be civil, and you have to be civil to people who are just trying to do their jobs. So that's my only problem with that. But other than that, yes, counter protest these dorks. Counter protest these neo-Nazi conservative fascists who want to who preach white supremacy and genocide to on their forums. The reason why, counter protest them, but also understand that if they're trying to bait you into violence,
don't fall for it.
You don't necessarily don't fall for it, and try your best not to do so. But at the same time, if they want smoke and they do attack you and assault you, then proceed to give them that smoke. You know what I'm saying? Like that, there's a difference. There's like in defense of, you know, of yourself. You know what I'm saying? I'm all for nonviolence, and I always talk about this on the show. But at the same time, I'm not stupid. If someone assaults me or my family, especially if we're at a protest, then they gonna catch that two-piece. You know what I'm saying? Like it's gonna happen. But other than that, there was some other good news. There's some other good news that's been going on in our world. I also do want to talk about. I also want to talk about the water issue that's been happening in Parchment, because that does affect us.
Yes,
we talked about it. We talked about it on the show before, but we have to address it. If you haven't called the city manager to get your water checked, please do. Because Parchment's water systems feed into Kalamazoo systems.
There was just a story earlier about oh gosh, Nora, did you see this one? It was a headline, and I didn't have a chance to read it before the show, but it said it was one of the local towns around here. They're advising people not to let infants drink the water. It's you know, one of the things I talked about, and Chris didn't say this on the show, but just in conversation, how like Parchment, it's almost like a tip of the iceberg type thing. Like there's a lot of water quality issues in the city that have been kind of kept quiet under the rug. They're really starting to come to the forefront now. I
mean, if you live on the north side and you've been by the factories, you know how the water and the treatment plants smell. Like, you know, you've been around that. I've been around that area all my life. I've lived on the north side all my life, and I've traveled up and down Patterson, going to Gold Road all my life, and it's always been horrible over there. It's always been muggy over there, and the waters never look clean over there. So again, check your water supply, check your stuff, people, because that is it's not like we haven't had a water crisis in Michigan before. And if you thought Flint was was a one-off or something, I've said on this show multiple times, 73% of the cities in United States do not have clean drinking water.
I would also advise, like, you talk about north side, like I grew up over on the south side in the Edison neighborhood, and likewise, you know, the old Allied paper mill, as well as there's a site extension there, kind of off of by Cork Road in the edge of the Millwood neighborhood. But people have been complaining about water quality and just general health problems around those areas for years. So
and I had to make correction. It's not 73. It's one third of the United States does not have clean drinking water, and these are
still horrendous.
It was like 30,000 different cities were saying that they had There was like 30. It was either 30,000 different cities. I'll pull it up because I saw it. 30,000 different cities have lead levels. It was lead levels higher or just as high as Flint, Michigan. I just saw that study.
While you're looking it up, I just wanted to throw something out there. So we're getting a phone call. And this happened on the show before too. Just in general, this kind of PSA, it's generally a little bit more difficult for us to take phone calls during the show. We only take like 1 or 2 breaks during the entire 2-hour set. However, I did want to let everyone know, if you want to communicate with us, with the program, probably the best way to do that is on our Facebook page, Hoodrat Strategist radio program. And, if you want to talk to us live during the shows, it's a little bit more difficult, but you can always message our Facebook page if you'd like. It's hard for us to do on-air calls, and particularly, we don't have a method to actually do call-ins through the studio phone.
Not yet.
So, not yet anyway.
We'll talk to Wider about that.
If you got something to say and you want to talk on the phone, always slide in Andy's DMs or mine, and then we can hook up our phone to the studio. And then you can get
there you go. Yeah. That's the best way to do it.
There was to go from good stories to sad stories to even sadder story. I know that we wanted to bring up the Democratic Party, and we wanted to talk about the DNC.
Well, before we do that, let's do one more good story.
Okay. What's a local good story?
Local good story is, and Nora, you were there last week. Maybe you could speak a little bit to this. Gotta give props to Kosacha. Once again, they're making that movement work. The vote came down at the county commission. And I believe
7-3.
7-3.
End the contract with ICE. We're not going to detain any more people for ICE in the county jail anymore.
Wait, I thought was it? Okay, from what I was familiar with, the county commission vote was just the county is not going to give or cooperate any resources with ICE. As far as I know, I thought it's still like the sheriff's call about whether they're going to still do ICE holds or not.
I'll have to double check into the specifics. I don't really know them myself.
Yeah, but from what I'm familiar with, the particular vote they voted on, it's basically a resolution. One, it puts even more pressure on Sheriff Fuller to stop doing ICE holds, and it also basically documents, we're no longer, the county, Kalamazoo County, is no longer going to coordinate or share resources with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And what we're still aiming to do, as far as I know, like the county doesn't have direct jurisdiction over what the sheriff's department does, but it lights another fire under Sheriff Fuller's butt to stop doing these ICE holds. Now you've got the city, you've got the county. Both of them have said unequivocally, we want this area to not cooperate with ICE in any form or fashion. And while we may not detain them like they had been doing in Kent and how they're still doing in Calhoun, and by the way, props to Grand Rapids folks, they're on the verge of ending Kent County's ICE contract, so props to them. But I did want to speak a little bit to something a couple weeks ago on the show when we had Dakota on. He was talking about when Rich Fuller was there, Sheriff Fuller was there at the local Democratic Party meeting, and I talked to some other people there, and apparently his justification for doing these ICE holds, one of the things he said is like, well, there are actually, we only have a couple of people held there for ICE, and he basically made this argument like, oh, they're very bad people. They're guilty of some very serious crimes, kind of saying like, oh, well, they deserve to be there. They deserve to be taken by ICE.
Why does that sound familiar?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
they're not sending their best.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like we haven't used the justification of, hey, they're criminals. They deserve to be punished in this way to justify the inhumane treatment of our own people before. I mean, we use the justification of they deserved it when cops kill unarmed black people. We use the same thing when it comes to when people used to justify women being sexually assaulted, or we use the same excuse when it came to banks justifying stealing from their customers. because it's in the law. They can do so, and they were suckers for allowing us to do so. We've heard this type of rhetoric before of people justifying horrible things that are being done to other human beings because it's not being done to them.
Yeah. So I mean, for the sheriff to say that, it was just a bad look. I'm sorry, man.
That's
seriously.
If they have done horrible crimes and they're going to be deported because of said crimes, all right, I can see your justification for that. It's not our job. It's not our job in this community to separate people from their families, to detain undocumented people for a organization that has been accused of slave labor in private prisons. And I'm talking about ICE. ICE was created in 2003, and there has been multiple stories in the Washington Post and in the Huffington Post of ICE using these undocumented folks to do slave labor. So no, I do not support that in any type of way. I don't care what kind of crimes they've done. So nah, son, it's inhumane. It's wrong. It goes against their human rights.
Exactly. And, just kind of leapfrog off that, like, the whole idea that we need, like, this separate agency for people who are undocumented, like, I don't get that. Look, if they committed a crime in Kalamazoo, if they live in Kalamazoo, then they're a citizen of Kalamazoo and they need to go through Kalamazoo's criminal justice system. Why ICE somehow needs to get involved, I don't understand. And also, like, it goes to this whole narrative of how, like, I don't know what is in the minds of some people, but, like, just because if an undocumented person commits a crime, it's not somehow more criminal than some regular ass person doing it. Like, if an undocumented person like murders someone, that person isn't extra murdered.
It's because they have jalapeno sauce all over them.
Oh yeah,
it's because the person is dark skinned. That's why. Like that's the underlining message that they want to put out there, that scary dark people are hurting good old fashioned Americans.
Oh no,
that's the lie.
Golly.
That's the lie that they want to put out there, and I encourage everyone to watch a video. There was a video that was on YouTube, No Filter by Anna Kasparian. She just did an entire piece on immigration in America and how Trump's policies is making it worse, making it harder for people who are legally here, and how undocumented immigrants, they pay into our system without actually getting benefits from our system, and they are less likely to do crimes. And she broke it down in a much more elegant way than I can. I encourage everyone to go and watch that video. It's on TYT. It's dope. I support it.
Yeah. One thing I'd like to point out is that a big scandal last month with the Kalamazoo County Democratic Party is that they failed to pass a resolution against Sheriff Fuller's ICE holds last month. Now, the next meeting is coming up this week on Thursday.
Oh, that's right.
It'll be at the Theo and Stacey's in Portage, on Portage Road. And it's 5 p.m. When does these things start again?
They're usually, they start at 5:30 and then the actual meeting is like 6:30 or so.
Okay.
I don't think I will still be at work. I'm playing the double.
I mean, I don't know. Technically I'm part of the Socialist Party now, so I mean I don't have voting rights. But I can be like, I come in and be like, y'all need to do the right thing, all right? Y'all consider yourselves part of the left? Step up.
I mean, here's the thing, man. Look, the Democratic Party right now, they're rolling back on a few things. I mean, one of the stories. There was a couple stories that we want to snap on. I want to snap on Dr. Ben Carson for making housing segregation great again, and I really want to snap on Tom Perez because the DNC chose to roll back their referendum on not taking fossil fuel money again.
They literally just passed a unanimous referendum on the DNC executive level 2 months ago. Two months ago. To not take any money for fossil fuels, which is fantastic. It was really great news. I was trying to bring it up on the show earlier, but we never got around to it.
Yeah.
But I guess we don't really have the chance to talk about how great this is because they just stepped on it. And there was 2 people that vote against repealing it this time, like some stupid offensive number like that.
Oh, no. The excuse that Tom Perez made, saying that he wants to support the fossil fuel workers. I'm like, I'm like, you want to support the fossil fuel workers by taking money from the owners of the fossil fuel companies?
You know what's BS? BS about that is like, they could do that without doing through a corporate PAC. Like, suppose if you were an employee at a fossil fuel company and you support a particular candidate or the Democratic Party, you can donate to them as an individual. You do not need to use a PAC that is associated with your industry.
For real, give an example. Think of how many people work at the gas station that are, obviously working class because they work at the gas station. Mm-hmm. Chances are they'll have a lot of interest in who gets elected and who could make their lives better. And you can support them and not their bosses who's underpaying them and giving them terrible hours.
The other issue that this comes to is the fact that this goes against the environmentalists that they have in the DNC. This goes against the interests of the climate scientists that are saying that fossil fuel industry and what they're doing is actively hurting our planet. This goes against what is the Democratic Party's interest when it comes to climate change. The overwhelming majority of our party, the Democratic Party, wants to move to a renewable energy source, move towards
and as quickly as possible too.
We want to the overwhelming majority of the Democratic Party. Last time I checked, it was over 80% wanted to move towards renewable energy. And they wanted to get off of fossil fuels, and they did not want politicians in the Democratic Party taking fossil fuel money, and also getting money out of politics. This goes to the exact core of the one thing that we talk about on this show on a daily basis. Money in politics, if you're taking money from corporations and you're serving the corporations, you're not serving your constituents. And that's what this does.
Yeah, exactly. And, I wanted to quote directly, too. Here's one of the things that makes me so mad about this. And this is a quote from Bill McKibben, who, if you don't know, he's a famous climate scientist. He organized 350.org, which is a climate advocacy organization named so after because 350 parts per million is the safe amount of carbon dioxide that should be at the atmosphere. Right now, we're at about 400. Ooh. So he said, the issue goes beyond the donations. At least as drafted, this proposal also recommends the party, recommits the party to an all-of-the-above energy stance, which was taken out of the platform after a lot of hard work in 2016. And now, I've mentioned this on the show before, and I'll get you just a sec, Nora. This was the issue that broke the camel's back for me in the 2016 election. It's why I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. It's because on the party platform, they refused to put a moratorium on fossil fuel extraction and refused to put a ban on fracking in there. Now, effectively, this
they didn't even want to have a carbon tax. They didn't even want a carbon tax. Yeah, and that's George Bush Sr.'s idea.
So it's what's crazy to me is like, God, I hope the progressive wing takes over this party, or at least takes over enough of it, because right now, if you strip down all the BS, the Democratic Party's stance right now, after this resolution passed, is like, we're cool with human extinction too, but if you want some solar panels, we can hook you up. Right? Nora.
So
it's like a dark comedy, folks. It's bad.
So when the resolution passed 2 months ago, they were banning these kind of donations. It actually, for once, really reinvigorated my faith in the party for a bit. Maybe they're still in bed with these other corporate interests, but if they're out of the tank from fossil fuels, then maybe we can finally get some progress on this. But it's just really throws a brick through it. And the fact that they passed that earlier resolution quietly is telling as to who they're really trying to appease to. Tom Perez didn't want to make a bunch of noise about not taking fossil fuel money because that would mess with his donor base. And consider that all the banks they take money from, they're still invested in fossil fuels. They've significantly decreased their investment since then, except for Chase. But still, they're pretty damn invested. Lawrence, it's
also Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo is also highly invested in pipelines, especially the Dakota Access Pipeline, things of that nature. Yep. They still want those things. They are still funding said things. So Wells Fargo, Chase,
get your money out of there.
Yeah.
It's interesting you brought up George Bush Sr. earlier because around during his administration there was a solid decade where humanity had a chance to stop out of control climate change. Like there were negotiations in the works to have like an actual solid treaty with rules and sanctions for people who break it to like keep carbon emissions at bay. And yes, he did also support a carbon tax, but like when those really started to deteriorate when his chief of staff at the time, I don't remember what his name is, started making things difficult. But whoever that guy is, he killed us, everyone.
Yeah. No, that's
I shouldn't have been watching The Simpsons. Damn you, 3-year-old Andy! I should have been paying more attention.
That was also the same time that Buckley v. Vallejo passed, so that corporations could give money because corporations were human beings, and that they are endued by their creator to give money to politicians.
And not too long after that, that's when the fossil fuel industry started like campaigning hard to prevent any sort of regulation and spread this sort of rampant denialism of climate change among the right.
I feel furious that George Bush Sr. is more progressive than some people in the Democratic Party. It's awful. Yeah. That pisses me off more than anything else. I'm sitting here like, what in the hell are y'all doing? Seriously.
Yeah, I mean, this whole country has been dragging our feet on literally like one of the most pressing issue of our times. And, it's important to point out the Republican Party is just awful and horrible. And also to point out clearly, like, Republican Party in America, they are literally one of the only conservative parties in Western politics that still denies climate change. You go over to Europe, you'll hear a lot of right-wing, even like Trump-esque rhetoric, but when it comes to climate change, they'll be like, oh yeah, it's totally a thing. It is,
Also consider the fact that the GOP takes over 90% of all fossil fuel contributions even before the DNC's referendum got passed and then banned. So it's not like they're losing out on a terrible amount of money if they're walking away from this.
To put a pin on it, the Democrat Party is only taking 20 since 2012. The Democratic Party is only taking 20% of the fossil fuel industry's money.
20%, okay.
Only 20%. They are literally the Washington Generals to the Republicans' Harlem Globetrotters.
Harlem Globetrotters.
But think about that. We're competing for an industry that's overwhelmingly funding the other side, and you're telling me that we need to take the 20%, or we're going to lose against Republicans, and you're. And the billing that you're trying to do, and the bills and the regulation that you're doing, the all-inclusive strategy. We've heard that from we heard that during the President Obama administration. The same President Obama who signed the climate accords also opened up the Arctic to drilling twice. No, dog, you can't do both. You cannot do both. You have to do one or the other.
You can't recommit to the Paris Climate Accord and then sit on your hands while activists are getting their skulls cracked trying to stop an illegal pipeline from being built.
I mean, so again, this is, and the thing that pisses me off even more is that the rampant corruption that we have in our administration right now, because Trump is President Jack O'Lantern is making this situation worse because his chief of staff and the people that he talked to are literally funded by the same corporations that have no problem destroying our planet as long as they make a buck before it happens. And we didn't even get to the story about how he's he's giving the VA and the control to the VA to people at Mar-a-Lago.
Oh,
like that was another story that we have that we can talk about after the break.
Yeah.
But it's almost 6 o'clock. We're supposed to.
Nora, you got? I saw you over there. I don't know if you had more to add. But
I just want to say, all the above on energy is basically the same as saying I'm gonna be on a diet, so I'm gonna eat this like thing of lettuce after I eat 5 slices of cake.
yeah.
I mean, come on, man. It's like saying I'm going vegan after I eat this Philly cheesesteak with bacon on top.
Really.
What? What?
And, I'd also say too, like, all those out there, you have like all the vote blue no matter who people who they got an outrage, especially like what just happened in Ohio, where there was
what happened in Hawaii, man.
What happened in Hawaii?
Kalalili Ang. I keep messing up his name. God, I keep messing up his name. Basically, Hawaii is one of the most bluest states in our union, and they basically put a lot of left wing, a lot of centrist corporatists in the primary. They won their primaries by drowning the progressive out. That's basically what happened. And a lot of them were lobbyists for the fossil fuel industry.
Oh my
Some of them was
God.
also lobbyists for baking industry.
The whole state's gonna be underwater.
So again, if we don't actually do something about climate change, Hawaii, Venice, Miami,
New York,
Washington D.C.
Right.
Yep.
Those
talk about draining the swamp.
like New Orleans. You can go overseas. Venice. I haven't been to Venice yet. I want to go to Venice before it's underwater.
Yeah, is it really?
You know what I'm saying? For real. Like, there's gonna be parts of this planet that's not inhabitable for human life because of what we're doing, and we have to work on it, man. We if you're a Democrat and you support taking money from the fossil fuel industry, but you don't support Medicare for all, you are not a Democrat.
No,
I'm sorry, you're not. You're not. Stop it.
You're maybe like a socially liberal Republican, and that's what the status quo of the party's been for a while now. It's like
oh man, wow. That is that's an amazing way of saying it.
All
right, we gotta take a break.
Yeah, let's do that. Y'all are listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back, Hoodrat Strategist radio program. Now, we're going to hop to a story that's international in scope. And there's this some really good on-the-ground reporting from Minton Press News I want to talk about. But just get in the context, if you haven't been following this, and, it's been over independent media, but not so much on the mainstream. In Yemen, last week, Saudi Arabian coalition blew up a school bus full of children in a crowded marketplace that was far and away from any kind of military targets or really anything you could justify dropping some bombs over.
Yeah.
And, a couple of things, just hot takes coming from this. Like, one, hardly any coverage on this. Something that's funny, Jimmy Dore pointed out, Chris Hayes covered it for about 5 minutes near like the end of his show. That's, and
he covered it for 2 minutes and 15 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So you talk about Russia and Stormy Daniels some more.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Or what's going on with Mimosa? Side note real quick, just we'll talk about Yemen, but I just did want to bring up the other day at work. So one of my folks that I take care of asked to watch the news. And it was the middle of the day, so it was on. So I turned on MSNBC, and we give the media a lot of crap for being sensationalist. They only talk about Trump, talk about the issues, and I think like turn it on. It's like, okay, you know what? I haven't watched one of these channels in a long time. Let's see if I'm accurate. And I kid you not, 3 hours that network was on in that house, and Trump. It was nothing but Trump. And they talked about like the Unite the Right 2 for literally about 15 seconds, just so they could segue it into a discussion about Omarosa. And then one of their commentators, and this is hilarious, he started talking about how, like, here's the thing. It's important to talk about this stuff, but I think it's a distraction. I think the mainstream media focuses too much on issues like these tapes with Omarosa, and my ears perked up. I'm like, oh, is he about to say some woke stuff? And it's like, we need to focus on things that are really important, like Russia.
Oh no!
Almost.
Okay, that reminds me.
Here's the thing. At least they didn't talk about Trump not being able to pronounce Nepal and he called Nepal nipple. I am not joking. That is not a joke.
Yeah.
That is not a punchline. He did not know what Nepal and Budapest was. He did not know those were countries. Yet Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is stupid. I know. Come on, son. But anyway, I'm sorry.
Yemen. So back to Yemen, and it's a little darker story. I guess it's good to have some humor. Yeah. Get your palate clean before we make you all sad and stuff.
Yeah. Go ahead, Nora.
So I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh. Y'all can start talking.
Okay. Here's the thing about this. We, the United States, with our taxpayer dollars, are giving money to organizations that behead people for witchcraft, that barely allow women to drive cars without a man being present in the said car, and they are committing genocide with our weapons and our money.
Our money and our tacticians. We have military personnel over there advising the Saudi coalition on the war fighting they're doing against Yemen, which is essentially, if you could call it any kind of warfare, it's siege warfare, which is a war crime. Yeah. That's when you basically strangle a population from any like resources, food, water, medicine that they need, and it's why it's become like the biggest humanitarian crisis on the planet right now.
The thing that makes this upsetting is the fact that, as Noam Chomsky once said, if the Nuremberg Accords was actually upheld, every president after World War II would have been executed for war crimes because of what we do in our foreign policy. You care about the troops. You care about human rights, and America's supposed to care about those things. There's outbreaks of cholera in Yemen because of the lack of food and medicine that they're getting because of what we're doing, what we're helping with.
Yeah. And there's actually, so I've referenced the Mint Press News has a really great article on this. The headline is "Mourning in Anger at Funeral of Yemeni Children Killed in U.S.-Saudi School Bus Attack." And there's actually a photograph here of, there's a child holding a fragment of an MK-82 bomb that literally says "Made in America" on it. It's just, and it's it was like it was a Raytheon Mark 82 general purpose free fall bomb.
Raytheon.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Raytheon.
Mm-hmm.
You killed your weapons was made, and it killed 50-something odd children and other people.
Yeah. Oh.
Congratulations. I hope that you're happy.
Yep, and the actual totals, 51 people killed, 40 of them children, 79 people were wounded in the attack. And this article actually has on-the-ground reporting, they went to the funeral. And, you know, oftentimes on the show, we try to point out, where terrorists come from. They don't come from the jihadi stork, okay? This is we need some militant extremists. Well, sometimes when a mommy and daddy want to bring death to America, they come.
But my parents told me they planted them in a garden and they just grow out of there.
Oh, my God.
But no, terrorists do not come from the stork. They do not grow on trees. They are created by us. And that's not just me saying it. We have military personnel who talk about how when we cause collateral damage, it is a perfect recruiting tactic for radical anti-American organizations. And in their own words, so this is
this wasn't collateral damage.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the thing. This attack was not collateral damage. It wasn't like they were fighting in a war zone and the bus full of kids was riding through the war zone. No, they shot into an open air market, which they have been doing for years now.
Yeah, and some people try to make the distinction. It's we're just selling them weapons. Well, here's a 13-year-old at the funeral, Kareem Ahmed. And this is what he told the Mint Press News. "We, the children of Yemen, who came to here for solidarity with our brothers and sisters, mothers, fathers, and Sadah, say to American people, the Saudis kill us with your weapons. We have fathers, mothers, schools, and games like your children." It's they know where these weapons are coming from, and it causes them to hate the United States, just justifiably, There's a grieving father who went on to say, this is Zaid al-Tayeb. 2 of his sons were killed in this attack. He said, 2 of my children were killed in this attack by U.S. weapons. They were not ballistic missile experts. They were not a threat to Saudi Arabia or the United States. How much I hate America and Saudi Arabia. There you go. Yeah.
I mean, it's not and I talked about this the other day when I was on the show. We sell weapons to ISIS and other terrorist groups. It's not, we create the terrorists that we want to kill because Raytheon and other military, industrial, and other weapons manufacturers want to use their weapons and want countries like Saudi Arabia and other countries buying our weapons so they can do things like this, which are war crimes. Yeah. So the administration of Saudi Arabia and the UAE should be in prison. The United States government should be held accountable for murdering children because that's wrong. Imagine if another country did that to us. Just imagine. Remember, folks, we were supposed to bomb Assad in Syria because they were doing chemical attacks on their own people, allegedly, right?
Yeah.
And we were supposed to go and attack them because of what they did to their own people. We're helping bomb children in schools, in hospitals. A couple months ago, we bombed Doctors Without Borders.
Yeah, that's right. We did. Mm-hmm.
We helped Saudi Arabia bomb Doctors Without Borders. Imagine if another country was like, you know what? The United States is just bombing innocent children for no reason. Maybe we should overthrow their government.
Please.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
what kind of response would we get? Like, we would have invaded every country on planet Earth. Like, are you kidding me?
Like, if they would have been like, if it came from, say, like China or Russia, it's like, oh, you know what? We heard Brazil had dinner with some Chinese people once, so we're gonna bomb you. That's just the disproportionality of America, especially under this administration.
It makes no logical sense, man. It only makes us look like it only makes us that much worse. That's it.
Yeah, it gives credence to, like, you know, when the jihadists like call us the evil empire. I mean,
they're not wrong.
Not wrong. Yeah, we're an empire and we're doing some evil, you know. I mean, you know that. It's tied to, like, you know, you ask, like, why are we, there's no reason for us to be doing it. What's even more horrible to me is that actually there is a reason for us to be doing it, and it's that Raytheon Mark 82 bomb. The reason we're selling these weapons to Saudi Arabia, it's not even that we have that much of a geopolitical stake. Well, we do have a geopolitical stake in it, but
what does Saudi Arabia even want from this war?
They want territory. They want to take over Yemen.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
They want Yemen. They want Yemen's resources. Right? Yemen has more oil wealth than Saudi Arabia.
There it is.
So, and they have more mineral wealth than Saudi Arabia. So what do? I'm going to attack your country, take your stuff, and there's nothing you're going to do about it.
And you know the big thing is like corporations like Raytheon, Northrop Grumman. I always stutter on their name. Northwich Gun Grum.
Yeah.
But defense contractors in general, you know, when we talk about how this is all about money and politics too, because the biggest reason, you know, so Bernie Sanders brought this to the floor, and he had a handful of Democrats and a handful of Republicans side with him. It's like, oh yeah, but you would think for most people this would be an ethical no-brainer. Of course we need to stop selling these people weapons. It's insane. But then you'll have somebody like Wolf Blitzer come on and criticize an anti-interventionist. He was interviewing Rand Paul at the time, and he literally scolded Rand Paul because his Wolf Blitzer, a quote-unquote neutral commentator on CNN, basically said, well, if we don't sell all these weapons to Yemen, wouldn't some of these workers at Raytheon and Northrop Grumman lose their jobs? Yeah, go ahead.
A couple things I want to add to that. First of all, I believe Anderson Cooper, before he worked at CNN, was a CIA intern, so think about that for a bit.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Another thing, in a recent speech that Trump made, like hyping up his Space Force, he actually said that having a really strong military is more important than jobs. So also take that with whatever populist credibility he might have had left. And other ways that we need to conceptualize what's going on in Yemen. Like, if this keeps if status quo, this war keeps on happening in Yemen, it's on track to like surpass the number of deaths in the Holocaust pretty soon, and I don't say that lightly.
Oof. Yeah, that's true.
And we're doing this at the behest of Saudi Arabia. They're they're our friends because money, but also obviously, but consider that they're a horrible, repressive, theocratic dictatorship that like beheads people in the street. And literally, when the Canadian government criticized them for jailing feminist activists that won the Saudi Arabian women the right to drive, the Saudi Arabian government, I S-word you not, tweeted a threat that they would 9/11 Canada.
I heard about that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Saudi Arabia said that they would.
On Twitter.
That's a conundrum about where our alliance lies if they do so, because Donald Trump opened 8 new businesses in Saudi Arabia during the campaign. So would he side with the people that he made businesses with, or is he going to side with our Canadian allies who he's been putting tariffs on?
Oh, he probably just, it's just a joke, bro. Yeah, lighten up.
Yeah, it's just a joke until until one of their buildings come down because of that's the other thing. 15 out of the 19 hijackers of the 9/11 planes came from Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia.
Yep.
So why are we still funding them? Why are we still cool with them? That's my question.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
well, the thing is, Saudi Arabia had all that oil, and we found out later on Afghanistan. I'm going to recycle this joke. Afghanistan's like Infinity War because it's super long, and we went there to collect precious stones. What is this shit?
All right,
too many people died.
Before we go, and with a snap, people died.
Yeah.
All right, before I have to actually dip out, because I know I have to dip out. I wanted to talk about HUD, and I also wanted to talk about Monsanto, but we can talk about Monsanto. Yeah. We can get those things next time I'm here. Just Ben Carson wanted just a quick snap into it. Ben Carson wants is the Secretary of HUD, Health and Human Services. Health and Human Services are supposed to.
That's Housing and Urban Development.
Yeah, my bad. I'm sorry, my bad.
Wrong letters.
My bad. Housing and Urban Development. Their job is to make sure that affordable housing. Their job is to make sure that affordable housing is available for Americans, because there are people who need affordable housing in America. They're not doing that anymore. They're moving away from that. So the Fair Housing Act of 1976, the Fair Housing Act that happened during the Civil Rights Movement, they're basically saying, 1964, they're basically saying, no, we don't need that. We don't need that. It's much more financially beneficial to make sure that we have luxury condos than to make sure that people who are struggling to find housing get it.
And a lot of these luxury condos, like, at least half of them aren't occupied because nobody can afford to live in them, and these property owners / developers can write that off on their taxes.
Mm-hmm.
They use it as a tax. They use it as a
tax evasion tactic. Like
they write it off on their taxes.
There's literally more homes in this country than there are homeless people.
And this is another thing. I'm glad that you brought that up. The other thing that this goes to is the fact that the real estate lobbyists are the second to third biggest lobbyists after pharmaceutical companies.
That figures.
So, and that's something that's never talked about, especially on state races, not necessarily local, federal races, but state races. It's not even close.
It needs to be talked about more in local races too, because like the gentrification is always most egregious in these big cities where people suddenly want to live in again after they moved all the way out to the burbs where you can't do anything until you drive 45 minutes.
Or some people will complain about, our most vulnerable citizens having to sleep in the park. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute.
I mean, here's the thing. If we had universal housing, the way that Martin Luther King talks about, where, or how Sweden and how Finland has it, they don't. It doesn't have to be a lavish apartment like one of the more expensive apartments around Kalamazoo. It could be a studio apartment so they can just have a roof over their heads. There's been studies that's shown that when people who are working poor have something like that, it not only does it boost our economy, but it also lowers the crime rate because people are not living on the street wondering about where they're going to be sleeping next. I mean, it's the moral, the more humane, and the more financial reasoning to make sure that people have fair housing and have access to housing in America.
Mm-hmm. No, that's true, and yeah, like I said, Ben Carson is. I mean, we him and people like Betsy DeVos, like they were kind of selected for the very reason that they're probably their actions are going to dismantle or be counterintuitive to the agencies that they actually run. And yeah, like you said, that's exactly what is going on with HUD right now, and it is definitely, that qualifies as some BS of the highest level. That's for maybe. Hey, well, we got that petition going around to get make LeBron James Secretary of Education. I don't know. Anybody you'd recommend to take over HUD, Lawrence?
Who would I recommend to take over HUD? Akon built a whole bunch of houses and built an entire electrical grid in certain parts of Africa. I would so put Akon like I wouldn't even put Akon. Like I would say that's one person, but I'm gonna be biased because there's a couple. What's her name? My friend Maria, who's a realtor here in Kalamazoo. Oh yeah. I would have her as HUD because she actually cares. Anybody? I mean, there's take your pick of anyone on that's a progressive on the left that actually cares. You could put Oprah on it. Oprah done built schools. She done built houses.
You get free housing.
You know what I'm saying? Are you kidding me? Put what's
you make Oprah the Secretary of Transportation?
No. I know. I got someone else for. I actually will put Elon Musk as Secretary of Transportation because of the bullet trains that he was talking about
and the
creating.
electric cars.
Yeah, I'm like, you know what? I don't even like Elon Musk like that, but I was like, yo, he could do that.
I think it's a great excuse to have Grimes hang around the White House.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And he seems to be effective. Like, you keep daring him to be more socialist, and he tries to do it. Still won't treat his workers fairly, but,
No, here's the thing. Here's the thing about Elon Musk, though. If Elon Musk actually does put into effect a plan like how they have in China about bullet trains here in America.
Oh yeah.
Or a more affordable transportation, and his plan of doing so, I would so put Elon Musk as Secretary. Yeah. No, but like fair housing, like how Secretary of Housing. There's other people who are qualified to do so besides the people who I just named. I'm naming them as jokes.
I mean, we're kind of having some fun here on the show. Yeah.
I mean, no, you know what? As someone to be Secretary of HUD, I'll put Dr. Cornel West. What are you talking about? Like, don't put. Dude, if it's me, if I was president and I could appoint that position, yeah, I'm putting Dr. Cornel West.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Tell me the reason why he shouldn't be like.
See, if I were to pick someone locally, like I've been on the board of Kalamazoo Collective Housing for about a year now, and it's probably going to stay that way until the end of this year. Like someone for there, or maybe Annie Sprague at the Fair Housing Center.
Hey,
I'd be the Secretary of HUD. I'd tear it up around there.
Yeah, she's a dope comrade. She would get stuff done.
All right, do you want to talk about actual news again?
Yeah. Let's get back to it. Did we want to cover that local story first?
Yes, please.
Okay, yeah. So we just, I think it's a good segue when we're talking about housing. I went in today thinking like I wasn't gonna have any like real like detrimental local stuff to talk about, but I found this Reddit thread earlier today that had me seeing Reddit. I don't know.
You know, if you need something detrimental to read about, just go on Reddit.
Oh yeah, there you go. But somebody and kudos to who wrote this. I'm not sure who did. I think it's like
name's gonna be up there,
anonymous or something. But they talked about on Monday, August 20th, the City Commission is going to vote on changes to the city park rules. And while they're basically pitching it as a decriminalization of city ordinances, a lot of the stuff that is listed in there are misdemeanors. However, there's a lot of new language in there that is going to be really punitive towards low-income folks and the homeless population. And we'll kind of go through it point by point and bring them up, but it's going to be bad. And I don't know, any quick takes, Nora, before I kind of read off some of these?
I actually did list a bunch of the specifics. Do we just want to start going over that now?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Okay.
Yep.
So, there's technically rules against, sleeping in the park, stuff like that, but they're not really enforced. Like, nobody's really bothering to do anything about that.
And just real quick, I did want to mention this point, because, their main argument is that, we're decriminalizing it. It's very selective enforcement. Technically, it's a misdemeanor to break some of these rules in the park about like sleeping overnight, etc. But anybody who walks in Bronson Park in the early morning, you know that the police doesn't actually enforce that. People sleep in the park pretty often. Excuse me. You know, they'll hang out there. They'll do a little bit of bathing. There's enough kind of a humanitarian presence here in Kalamazoo that we've effectively kind of had a de facto agreement with the police that it's like, no, don't arrest those people for doing this stuff. However, the civil infraction thing, while it's not as legally serious, it would basically they'd be able to pass out citations and civil infractions to people who literally have the least ability of anybody in the city to actually pay them. But before we talk more about that, go ahead, Nora, and let's talk about the specifics of what's being proposed.
Yeah, so I combed through, like, I guess, specific changes to the existing city-level park rules. And first off, this, of course, puts specific punishments to a lot of things previously unenforced. It expands the city manager's power, as they've been doing for a while, over the park. It cracks down on vaping as well as smoking. It changes misdemeanor to civil infraction in some cases, as well as jail/cash fines in others. It bans music played on speakers outside of certain events. It's a ban on bathing. And it gives park and rec employees law enforcement authority. And keep in mind, this would apply to any park within the city limits. Though Bronson is technically county-owned, I'm sure they're aiming this specifically at Bronson. But it makes me wonder how counterproductive that would be, because it's right by the city hall, and I'm sure they have plenty of angry folks coming right out of the park being like, hey, what do you mean we can't sleep here?
Oh yeah, and there's a lot of language, like 2 or 3 of these different provisions specifically talk about permissible sleeping hours. So currently, sleeping is permitted technically in city parks between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. With no restriction on the number of consecutive hours. But this new part of the ordinance limits sleeping in parks to 2 hours within a 12-hour period. Hypothetically, if somebody who's not homeless, who's just decided to take a nap in the park, you could get nudged by a city and parks employee and be like, here's a ticket, you're sleeping too long.
Damn. Or you could have it from the freaking Parks and Rec people.
Yeah. And also, like, reemphasize, this was already part of the rule, but it disallows camping where bedding, sleeping bags, personal belongings, or other materials. Now, as I said, if you go to Bronson Park in the morning, and we use Bronson Park as an example because that's probably the park in the city that's most frequented by our homeless population.
I would say Martin Luther King Park is very popular as well, but like Bronson's the most visible. It's the central park of the city, and it's kind of hard to ignore, really.
While that was part of the existing definition, what Nora says, this is about ratcheting up enforcement. And again, with the use of citations and civil infractions, you're going to basically pile up these fines to people who, I mean, if they're sleeping in the park, they obviously don't have the money to pay a citation. So it's part of a larger pattern that other cities that have been doing to criminalize homelessness, to push the homeless population further and further out of areas that are visible, even though they are, really the most convenient areas for these homeless folks to stay. So go on, Nora. I feel like I cut you off again.
Combed through again. I realized there is also, tougher restrictions on pets, tougher restrictions on using the outlets, which is not going to be great for the Pokemon Go players either, who frequent the park. This is what, Kalamazoo residents have been talking about for a while. We all say it over and over. We want affordable housing. We want affordable housing downtown. We want affordable housing. And, I mean, we're getting it some places, but it's not, usually not quality houses, or they're in a really tough location for people to, get to work on time or do whatever else they need to do, you know?
Yep. Another thing to point out with the sleeping rules, a big change. That's a really huge problem. Originally, there's no sleeping permitted technically, legally speaking, between the hours of 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. And the new amended text broadens that from 8 p.m. to 12 p.m. noon. So basically, it shortens the permitted sleeping time in the park from 14 to 8 hours.
Wait, didn't you just say it was 2 hours, something like that?
Okay, so one of the rules is you can only sleep for 2 consecutive hours at a time. And this other rule now says you can only sleep in the park between the hours, it's between the hours of 12 p.m. and 8 p.m. So you have an 8-hour window from noon to 8 where it is legal for you to sleep in the park for 2 hours at a time.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes. And again, originally there's a much larger window. There's about a 14-hour window where it was permissible to sleep in the park. And also some interesting language in here about changes. So here's an example. Camping in any park is prohibited without written permission of the city. They've changed that to say camping in any park is strictly prohibited. So it's basically alluding to that they want to enforce this more strictly. But it's prohibited without written permission of the city manager or his or her designee. So it basically, as it was formerly written, permission of the city, that can be a little bit, there's more elbow room there. You could get permission from a city official to sleep in the park. Now you have to go one specific person or the representatives. That would be the city manager, Jim Ritzema at the moment. And what's really troubling to me about this is, the city manager was really in the guts during a lot of the foundation process. And when we talk about these ordinances, these changes that are meant to target homeless people, so much of the rhetoric around the Excellence Foundation and even like some other philanthropic ventures like the Kalamazoo Promise is about lifting people up out of poverty. It's about lifting people up, lifting the community up, and enfranchising them economically. However, when it comes to our most vulnerable citizens who a lot of times they don't have another space to go sleep. And part of the reason they sleep at Bronson Park is not only because it's convenient and close, but also for safety. If they have to sleep somewhere more secluded, it opens up that population to danger, to being robbed, mugged, or sexually assaulted or murdered, et cetera, et cetera. Downtown in the Bronson Park, there's a lot of visibility that works to help keep them safe. The flip side to that is that visibility bugs certain people, and I'm going to guess it probably bugs certain people who contributed to the Excellence Foundation, and certain people who go downtown to enjoy our breweries and our businesses, but they don't like the weird-looking people who live in the park. Sorry, go ahead, Nora.
There's a lot of like little tweaks to the rules that also do like specifically say, this is the city manager's choice. The city manager's choice, like I haven't even lived in Kalamazoo for super long, but I keep on seeing the position of city manager become more and more powerful. It makes me wonder, it just bothers me. I don't really have a coherent thought.
But no, I agree. That's kind of where I was going with it as well. Like the city manager's position is becoming more and more of this, more responsibilities and more of an arbiter of the city's day-to-day functions at a time where we are ceding more and more of our power and our democracy in the city to a handful of billionaires. And, so many people in the city don't see it. I was thinking about this at the gym today. Kalamazoo as a city, we are socially liberal, but economically we are super Republican. Even one could say this like stringently like right-wing libertarian even, because so many of the economic choices our city has made has been not even about financing the city better, but about ceding more and more of the city's power to a handful of individuals who run the large corporations in our town. And where I see with this is, again, it's gentrification, it's this whole kind of urban blight argument where they're trying to, and I'll bet you anything when we go to that because I'm going to this meeting, by the way.
There's a meeting, by the way, on Monday.
City Commission meeting. When I go to this meeting, there will be people talking about how the homeless people are unsightly or that they're dangerous or, all of the standard arguments you get when they're trying to shuffle homeless people around in a major metropolitan area. And, like I said earlier, our city, if we are serious about lifting people up out of poverty and standing with those individuals, we need to stand with the most vulnerable members of our community. And those are the people who have to, sleep in the park at night, and furthermore, another thing that needs to be brought up too is there's another solution to this problem, and it's a much bigger solution. But hey, we're getting this billions of dollars handed out to us, talking about solving poverty. Here's what the city should do. They don't want homeless people sleeping in the park. Buy up some properties, some vacant properties, and there's a lot of them in this town, and start giving people some free housing. Okay?
It's not that complicated. So, like, do you know something that I find unsightly?
Mm-hmm.
What I think is unsightly is that big mall/condominium space they're trying to build, that they've been building on the corner of South Rose and West Main for the past year, blocking off this huge corner in the center of town. And these are going to be luxury apartments that aren't going to be filled. We already know that. It's across the street from the Radisson.
Mm-hmm. It also blocks the Kalamazoo building sign, which, as a lifelong resident, just makes me very irritated. But
it's right across from Bronson Park. It's a couple blocks down from the bus station. It's in the way of everything.
It's the way a lot of these city officials think. I'm going to give some heat to Bobby Hopewell when they were talking about what to do with the old firehouse near Papa Pete's. There was a community meeting. Everybody said affordable housing.
Yes.
Everybody said affordable housing. And said there should be some small businesses, maybe a pharmacy and a market or something, because there needs to be what do they call it?
Pharmacy wouldn't be a bad idea because...
Something closer or even a bodega or something, somewhere people who live closer to downtown, a quick place to go to get groceries. And Bobby Hopewell came up to me and he was showing me a video of this open air market in New York, and he's like, oh yeah, what do you think of that? Isn't that cool? And I'm just kind of humming to myself okay. And their priorities, it's in a place that is surrounded by businesses. It's literally on the Kalamazoo Mall. Why is your first go-to idea, let's create some more boutique businesses in here? We need places where people can live. That's what we need, okay? God, that's starting to get all raged up, my ear. Anything else to add to this story, Nora? I know we've been talking about it for a minute.
I mean, I've talked about working on a volunteer, the volunteer board for Kalamazoo Collective Housing, and it's one of the many nonprofits in the city, but it is explicitly a co-op, so I'd say it's got a little bit more in terms of helping people than most others, but still they only have 3 houses, and that you can only fit so many people into each house. I live in the biggest one with about up to 8 or 9 people. With that's something we could definitely use more of, but any of this philanthropic material only goes so far, because you have to manage it and you have to have people that are willing to put in the work, and it's just not a very effective way of doing things a lot of the time. But I really do respect KCH and the people who work into it and what they do, and I love it there. By the way, apply for some of the rooms. We got some openings. You can stay here, and your money won't go to a rich sociopath developer who's building shiny homes that no one's going to live in.
Yep. Won't go to Berkshire Hathaway I talk crap about Lukeman. Lukeman isn't really a big evil corporation, but they certainly drop the ball at maintenance all the time. If you live in the Vine neighborhood, you know what I'm talking about.
What even are they building? That one other building in the Vine Business District.
Which
it's right by the it's right between the corner store and the laundromat. They're building something.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. I can't remember exactly what it's going to be used for. I think it is going to be apartments, though.
Really?
Yeah.
You're blowing my mind right now.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, honestly, you know what? I'll look into that. Maybe we'll come back next week and figure out what they're doing with that property. If you know what we're talking about, it's by Laundromat, right by Crow's Nest, Fourth Coast, and Martini's. They're building a new building right next to the Laundromat. You know, before we hop onto another topic, just want to let y'all know, if you are interested in what we've been talking about, if you're a little outraged about what we've been talking about, there is going to be a city commission meeting Monday, August 20th at 7 p.m. And you can go down there and you can say your piece during citizens' time. I know I'm definitely going to make it a point to be there. So I think with that, Nora, I know you brought up a couple of topics that you wanted to bring up on the show. I
think we already talked about most of them.
Yeah, we really did. We went through a lot of the really important stuff. I think, there was one that I really wanted to hit on that I don't think we really got around to. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nora.
Did we? I don't think we talked about how U.S. air marshals and the TSA are spying on air flight passengers a lot more.
Yeah. Oh, man. And this happened last week. They were talking about it a lot on Democracy Now! The other day. Do we have an article?
We have an article, but it's back there. Basically, this program, Quiet Skies, it's been run with our tax dollars for, probably not too long after 9/11 happened. Is that they watch people who sweat too much, who fidget too much, who go to the bathroom too much. I'm sure they disproportionately watch brown people too. But basically, they spy on everyone in the airport to see if and could do something suspicious. And it's hard to. I don't know how many of you listeners have flown recently, but it's hard to not be uncomfortable at an airport or on a plane. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
What is the deal with their food?
What is the deal with
Not only that, a recent court case determined that the TSA can legally get away with sexually assaulting you and not be prosecuted for it. So there's that also.
And the really disturbing part of this whole Quiet Skies thing is ostensibly what the TSA and the FBI and all the big surveillance agencies have told us is that, when we do at the airport, we only tail suspects. We only go really monitor people who think we might be up to no good. But as this is real, their Quiet Skies program is a much wider net. According to the Boston Globe article, their surveillance, it would target flight attendants on duty, young business executives. At least one case, another federal law enforcement officer.
Wow.
Apparently, anyone who flies in the U.S. is pre-screened for the program. And documents show about 30 people are monitored on domestic flights each day. And it gets really ridiculous when they start talking about the justification they use for tailing and monitoring people. Some of the stuff that he talks about is so they talk about sorry, I'm trying to find it here in the article. So basically, partially known terrorists, and the stuff they do, it provides zero information really about any of these people who are actually targets. And they'll have air marshals track 35, 50 people at a time. They'll and as a matter of fact, they'll even bump people off of planes if there's not enough room. Excuse me. And so excuse me. But now they'll have air marshals follow people who have not committed any crime, simply for reasons because they've been to Turkey recently, or that there was actually cited like suspicious behavior, like going to the bathroom too often, not going to the bathroom enough, having sweating profusely.
What is the right amount of times to go to the bathroom when at an airport?
I don't know. Maybe the TSA should put out a guide or something. How to behave if you don't want to get tailed by our hired goons. A guide. So basically, if you're acting in any way that they perceive as like abnormal or odd, they could literally will have an air marshal tail you and watch you and surveil you for no good reason. And another thing, the budget for this program is about $800 million. So
think about what that could pay for.
What that could that could pay for a program that has been proven not to reduce terrorism or crimes or anything like that on aircraft. So like that's another reason to be outraged by it. If you're okay with the surveillance state for whatever reason, it's also a colossal waste of money. So there are better things they could be doing. Probably even better things they could be doing in the context of airport security.
For real.
That money could be spent on.
Like you could make the seats less uncomfortable.
Hey, that's another thing. Although I think there was a recent story, I can't remember which airline it was, but they were talking about taking out some of the bathrooms just to...
Oh my God.
It's like, that's what the airlines have been doing, like more and more. If you fly coach, as most of us do when we do fly, they're just shrinking legroom incrementally, getting rid of the bathrooms, just trying to fit as many sardines in the can as they possibly can. I think the only other news story we had left, I did want to mention this, because last week we did talk about, with all the primaries rearing up, it's important for us to kind of take a temperature check on election integrity.
Yes.
And we talked last week about how the ACLU was suing Michigan, or not suing, but investigating Michigan for basically running out of ballots. And I want to follow up with a story about one of our neighboring states, and a state that has had a very bad history with election integrity. This is an article from a dear friend. He's not really a dear friend. I took a photo with him once and did a whole fangirl thing. Oh my God, it's Greg Palast. Oh,
this guy's fantastic, though.
Yeah, he is. He's been at the forefront of really uncovering election integrity issues for decades now. Since like the Bush election, he's had articles in The Guardian and Rolling Stone. Unfortunately, not covered a lot by mainstream American press.
Of course not.
Because they want us all to think that our election integrity is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with it.
We recently had 11-year-olds hack into the same one that effed up in Kansas.
Yeah, exactly. So we're ranked 42nd in the world. Anybody tries to tell you our election integrity is good, doesn't know what they're talking about. Or if they blame Russia, it's like, well, Russia didn't invent cross-check.
We're number 47.
Yeah.
We're number 47.
Russia didn't make us decide not to have paper ballots. Russia didn't decide to make us use voting machines that are easily hackable.
Russia didn't gerrymander our districts. Russia didn't decide that Wyoming should have the same amount of senators as California. Russia didn't decide that states can legally purge people from their voter rolls.
And that's what this story is about. It's about Ohio, and the headline is Ohio election determined by votes not counted, not by votes cast. That's his kind of eye-catching headline. And just to break down, this is what happened. This is from Greg's article. According to the official tally, Republican Troy Balderson currently leads by a mere 1,564 votes, or 0.08% in the race for Ohio's 12th congressional district against Democrat Danny O'Connor. But it's not close. The Democrats won if you counted all the votes. 500,000 people, 500,000, were removed from Ohio's voter rolls by Republican Secretary of State John Husted in the past 2 years. If any of those people who lived in the 12th district found their names missing, they got a provisional ballot. Indeed, there were about 3,435 provisional ballots in play. Here's the bad news. If you were wrongly removed from the voter rolls, they still won't count your provisional ballot. Now, whose ballots are they? We know they are overwhelmingly from Franklin County, from the urban area, which is overwhelmingly Democratic.
What a surprise.
Yep. Supreme Court heard the case and voted 5-4 to allow Ohio to remove these people from the voter rolls. I think we talked about that a few weeks ago on the show. So there's not much speculation. We know that those are Democratic votes going in a throwaway pile into the electoral dumpster. And he goes on to say, in addition to 3,435 provisional ballots, we have 5,048 absentee ballots, and there's a lot of what they call spoiled ballots. A lot of those votes are cast and not counted. Again, overwhelmingly in the urban, that is Democratic areas around Columbus and in Franklin County. So, again, I wish more people followed Greg and his work because it's so good. Please tell all your friends about it. And he's also got a great documentary about called "The Best Democracy Money Can Buy," and that talks all about how the election was stolen for Donald Trump via cross-check. It's important for us to bring up these election integrity issues. Not only, one, pointing out Ohio's had a really bad history with this, going all the way back to the Bush v. Gore election. But also, it's fundamentally important. Not enough people talk about it. I was just at my family reunion on Saturday, and we got to talking about politics, and I brought up cross-check, and again, I was the only one in the room who knew anything about it. People, again, they got... we were sitting by the pool, and a lot of shocked gasps when I told them about the scale of it and what it is. But not enough people know about this stuff.
No, they don't.
And we're talking about election integrity. This is like the key issue. This is the stuff that's letting Republicans win. It's the stuff that's keeping progressives from winning their races. And more people need to talk about it.
Yeah. Is there a recount going to happen in this district that we know of? Does Ohio make that too difficult?
I would bet you anything no. And, that's a problem. Even when people try to arrange for recounts, when Jill Stein tried to do the Michigan recount.
Yeah, it got shut down.
Shut down by Hillary Clinton's campaign, of all people.
No, it got shut down by Bill Schuette.
Oh, Bill Schuette.
Yeah, it definitely got shut down by Bill Schuette.
Okay, I was going to say, no, you're right. I misspoke. Hillary Clinton's campaign did not support it, though.
Yes.
Which is very interesting. Actually, a little bit of a side note here. Something very revealing. If anybody's read the book Shattered, it's a tell-all book that really tracks the Hillary Clinton campaign from the inside, from its inception all the way to election night. And something that was very instructive to me was in the book, they actually talked a little bit about election integrity issues and how, Obama and Hillary knew that some of these votes weren't being counted. They knew that there was some voter suppression going on. Obama himself advised Hillary to go ahead and concede because, one, he cited a lot of the rhetoric Trump had been saying about how the election was rigged, and that in order to keep the American people maintain their confidence in the election system, he advised Hillary to concede without bucking against these election results and without pushing for these recounts. So it's kind of ingrained in the system. A lot of the times, Democrats will not fight back against this because a lot of people higher ups, a lot of people who fund them, they want people to make sure that they have they think that our elections have more integrity than they actually do. And also, kind of to quote Greg Plast himself, one of the reasons Democrats don't cry foul on Republicans when they do these voter purging tactics is, their hands aren't clean either. When we talk about provisional ballots spoiling races, Democratic Party did this exact same thing out in California during the 2016 Democratic primary.
Yes.
All told, somewhere thousands and thousands, perhaps even up to 1 million votes that were supposed to go to Bernie Sanders ended up getting purged in this fashion. So, their hands aren't exactly clean either when it comes to this stuff.
See, I guess this is kind of why I was worried, with what's going on with the Supreme Court, and especially that decision to allow states to purge voter rolls. Makes us wonder if our democracy is already doomed, if it's already too late. This is what I'm talking about. Folks. And we've talked about, Washington journalists are used to talking about Ohio as if it's a swing state. It's not. Like, Ohio is super draconian. Like, even if their current governor, John Kasich, like, paints himself as a moderate, he's passed, like, one, like, horrible abortion restriction after another. And it's...
Yeah. The swing in Ohio isn't so much about the actual political temperature of the electorate there. It's about... The swing is how many leftists vote to overclock the voter suppression built into that state. That's the swing.
It's really horrible in Florida, which isn't a surprise either. In North Carolina, it's really bad. It's bad most places.
All right, well, I think we're winding down right now. It's almost 7 o'clock. I want to thank everybody for listening tonight. Again, you can find our program on YouTube, and then we also have a Facebook page. You can go and follow that. You'll get updates and access to the episodes as soon as they get posted online. Thank you all for listening. This has been the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 FM WIDR Kalamazoo. Thanks for tuning in, and keep on fighting for that revolution solution.